My name is Brooke Ellison. I'm 25 years old, and I've spent more than half my life watching people walk through me like I'm made of glass. After my mom died, I became the backbone of our home, but no one ever seemed to notice. My dad sank into silence. My little sister, Nicole, turned into the family's golden child. And me? I learned to fill the fridge, press school uniforms, and dry my own tears in the dark. When people came over, they'd pat Nicole on the head and call her beautiful and brave. I'd be the one serving lemonade from the kitchen. And no, whenever asked how I was doing, I gave up a full ride to a college upstate to stay home and help. I picked up night shifts, helped with homework, canceled birthdays so Nicole could have hers done properly. It became a pattern. Her wins were our wins. My wins didn't count. Dad always said I was stronger, that Nicole needed more help, and I believed that for a while. But slowly, I started realizing what was really happening. It wasn't just favoritism, it was erasure. They didn't see me. Not when I worked 2 jobs, not when I kept the lights on, not even when I paid the last 2 property tax bills out of my own savings. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to be the problem until one Tuesday morning. I opened Instagram, and there it was, Nicole, in a silk robe, surrounded by bridesmaids. Caption, "Can't wait to say I do in the home I grew up in." Our home. My home. The home I cleaned, paid for, held together. I blinked. I scrolled. I waited for a tag, a message, anything, nothing. That's how I found out my sister was getting married, and that the wedding was happening in my house. No invitation, no mention, not even a warning, just a photo shoot in my living room like I was a ghost. That was the moment something snapped inside me. And the silence? It was over. I waited a full day before I said anything, not because I didn't have words, but because I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there'd been a mistake. Maybe the post was just a photo shoot, not the real thing. So I called Dad. He picked up like nothing was strange. "Hey, Brookie, everything okay?" Brookie, the nickname he only used when he wanted something. I asked him directly. "Is Nicole's wedding happening at the house?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "Yeah," he said. "It's just easier. This way. Saves money. And the backyard's got that tree your mom loved. You know how much that means to Nicole." I swallowed hard. "And no one thought to tell me?" Another pause. "Well, it didn't seem necessary. You've been busy lately." "Busy?" I was working double shifts to pay the mortgage. The same mortgage he used to forget existed unless the lawn needed mowing. I asked about helping, attending, being involved. He laughed, and said, "Honey, weddings are stressful. Nicole didn't want too many cooks in the kitchen. You know how she gets." I hung up. 2 hours later, Nicole texted me for the first time in 3 months. It said, "Hey, just heard you called Dad. Sorry you found out like that. It's just, you're not really part of the bridal party vibe. Hope you understand. Love ya." Not really part of the bridal party vibe? She could have stabbed me, and it would have felt kinder. I stared at my phone, fingers trembling. They weren't just excluding me. They were erasing me from my sister's biggest moment, from the house I kept standing, from my own family. And the worst part? They genuinely thought I'd just take it, like always. But something had shifted. That little voice inside me, the one I'd spent years silencing, was awake now. Loud. It didn't want to beg. It wanted to fight, and not with fists, not with tears. With the one thing none of them expected from me. Power. 3 days before the wedding, I pulled into the driveway of the only home I'd ever known. and it looked like a stranger's mansion. White tents stretched across the lawn. Florists were trimming roses I planted with my grandmother. A DJ ran sound checks from the patio. And parked out front, a luxury rental van filled with designer gowns, champagne, and satin slippers. I walked inside. No one looked up. Bridesmaids were laughing in silk robes. Nicole's fiancé brushed past me, holding champagne flutes like he owned the place. And there, in the kitchen I used to clean after school, my sister stood taking selfies, in a tiara. Nicole glanced at me once, then smiled like I was a stranger from the street. "Oh, Brooke, didn't expect you." I nodded. "Yeah, I live here, remember?" She laughed. Right. Just for a few more days. Don't worry, we cleared out your room. We needed it for the makeup artist. Cleared out my room." I looked toward the hall. My door was open. My things, gone. A ring light sat where my bookshelf used to be. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Nicole walked over, placing her hand on my shoulder like she was comforting a disgruntled intern. "Hey, don't be upset. It's just, this weekend is really important to me, and we didn't want any weird energy." I pulled away. "So you kicked me out of my own room? Without asking? And told people I don't even know to treat this house like it's theirs?" She blinked. "Technically, Dad owns it. You've been staying here, like a guest. A guest." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the foundation they built their comfort on. And now that they didn't need me, they were tossing me aside. I walked past her, back to my room. I found my clothes folded in plastic bins, my journal thrown in a box with old Christmas ornaments. My grandmother's photo frame, broken. They didn't just exclude me, they erased me. But that night, I made a decision. I wasn't leaving this house. They were. I stayed quiet that night. I didn't argue. Didn't shout. Just watched from the shadows as they toasted champagne in the living room I used to mop after dinner. Every corner of this house held my fingerprints. Every bill, every broken faucet, every leaky pipe. I fixed it. I paid for it, but to them, I was invisible, disposable. What they didn't know was this. 6 months ago, I'd quietly assumed financial control of the house. Dad was drowning in debt and almost lost the property. When the bank came calling, I paid the back. Taxes, quietly, without fanfare. In exchange, he signed over a portion of the ownership to me. He was too embarrassed to tell anyone. Said it would hurt his image if people knew his daughter was the one keeping the roof over their heads. He said, "It's just a formality. You'll always have a place here." So I signed the paperwork, saved the house, and kept the deed, titled in both our names, with a clause that allowed me to petition for full ownership if I proved I'd maintained the property for over a year, which I had. The contract had been sitting with my lawyer, for months untouched, but now I was done being silent. The next morning, while Nicole practiced walking down the aisle in my mother's backyard, I met with my lawyer via video call. He reviewed the clause, said I had more than enough documentation, receipts, utility bills, even signed statements from neighbors. I smiled for the first time in days. I told him to file the petition, effective immediately. By noon, the county clerk's office had stamped it. By 4 p.m., legal notices were printed, and by sundown, I was ready. The house wasn't just mine in spirit anymore. It was mine on paper. And come wedding day, there would be no altar, no happily ever after in my living room, no guests sipping champagne on the porch I'd painted with my own hands. Because I wasn't just crashing the party. I was ending it. The morning of the wedding, I dressed slowly. No gown, no glitter, Just a crisp navy blouse, dark jeans, and the gold necklace my mother left me. The one no one else ever dared touch. I made myself coffee from my kitchen. Outside, the chaos had already begun. White chairs were lined in rows across the backyard. A violinist played soft music under the magnolia tree. Bridesmaids in champagne dresses squealed over last-minute photos, and Dad was walking around in a rented tux, grinning like a celebrity on parade. Not once did anyone knock on my door. Not once did they ask where I was. They thought I had left, that I had slinked away, tail between my legs. But I was still here, and I had something they didn't. Proof. At exactly 11:47 a.m., my lawyer arrived. Not in a flashy car, not with drama, just quiet professionalism and a large envelope tucked under his arm. He nodded at me. "You sure?" I took a breath and nodded back. "Absolutely." We stepped outside just as the music swelled. Nicole stood at the back door, veil fluttering, about to make her entrance. She looked beautiful. But then again, so do hurricanes. My lawyer cleared his throat, loud enough to quiet the violin. "Good morning. I'm here on behalf of Brooke Ellison. This property is no longer available for event use." Nicole blinked. "What?" Dad stepped forward. "Excuse me, who are you?" My lawyer smiled politely and handed him the envelope. "Legal documentation. Brooke is now the sole legal owner of this home and all land it stands on. This event was planned without her consent. You're trespassing." Nicole's face turned pale. "This is some kind of joke, right?" I finally spoke. My voice was steady, cold. "No joke. This is my house now. I let it go too long, but I'm done being the silent one. You don't get to erase me from my own life," guests whispered. The violinist stopped playing. The photographer slowly lowered her camera. Nicole stared at me, wide-eyed. "You're ruining my wedding." I tilted my head. "No, Nicole. You ruined our relationship. I'm just reclaiming what's mine." The silence after my words felt like thunder. Nicole's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dad flipped through the documents like he was searching for a loophole that didn't exist. And the guests? They stared, some in pity, others in shock, and a few with barely concealed smirks, enjoying the drama they didn't pay for. "I can't believe you would do this," Nicole finally gasped. "On my wedding day?" I folded my arms. "Oh, you mean the wedding I was never invited to? The one happening on my land, in my house, using my room as your bridal suite?" Dad stepped in then, voice tight with panic. "Brooke, can't we talk about this after the ceremony? Let her have her moment." I cut him off. "Funny. You never asked if I was having a moment when you cleared out my bedroom like I was some unwanted tenant. Or when Nicole called me bad energy." Nicole looked like she might cry. "You're being selfish." I almost laughed. "Selfish?" I repeated. "You used this house, my room, my things, and erased me from the entire weekend. But I'm the selfish one?" A few guests started gathering their things awkwardly. Someone muttered, "Maybe we should come back another day." The spell of the wedding was broken. My lawyer stepped forward again, voice calm and firm. "Legally, Ms. Ellison has full authority to ask any unauthorized guest to leave the premises immediately. You may challenge it in court later, but for today, this is final." Nicole turned to Dad, desperate. "Say something." He looked torn, guilty, but also defeated. "I told you this might happen," he muttered. "You didn't listen." That did it. Nicole's face twisted, not with sadness, but with rage. "You just love making everything about you, don't you?" she hissed. "You couldn't stand to see me happy for one day." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I wanted to be part of your happiness, Nicole. You slammed the door in my face." So now? I'm just closing it. I turned to the crowd. You have 10 minutes to gather your things and leave. This wedding is over. You'd think people would argue, push back, make a scene. But no one wanted to be part of the train wreck anymore. One by one, guests started slipping out. The bridesmaids whispered behind Nicole's back as they folded their robes and tiptoed past me, heels in hand. The violinist packed up without a word. Even the wedding planner, a woman with a clipboard and years of patience, gave me a respectful nod before disappearing down the driveway. Nicole stood frozen in the middle of the yard, veil clinging to her shoulders like a ghost that didn't want to leave. Please, she said. Brooke, you're my sister. I almost flinched, because the way she said it, like it was her last bullet. But I didn't waver. Sisters don't erase each other, I said quietly. You didn't just forget to include me, Nicole. You made sure I had no place here. And now you're dealing with the consequences. Dad sat down on a folding chair, face in his hands. For a second, I felt a sting of guilt. He was aging. Weary. He hadn't always been this careless. But he let it happen. He let her take over everything. I turned to him. I needed you, I said, and you chose her, every time. He looked up, eyes glassy. I didn't know how to fix it. I nodded slowly. You still don't. The last guest left the yard in silence. The wedding was officially over. Nicole's fiancé, the one who never once asked where I was or why my name wasn't on the invitation, took off his bow tie and muttered something about needing space to think. Then he got into his car and drove away. Nicole didn't chase him. She just stood there, in a dress that cost more than my first car, staring at a life that had unraveled in front of her. I turned and walked back toward the house. My house. Each step felt heavier than the last, not with regret, but with release. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I was walking on my own terms. The house was quiet again. No champagne flutes, no chatter, no fake smiles. Just me and the dust of their disappointment. I stood in the hallway, staring at the bouquet someone had left behind. Probably one of the bridesmaids. It sat on the table like a symbol of everything they tried to build without me. And lost. I didn't touch it, didn't need to. Instead, I walked to my old room, the one they'd turned into a bridal suite. Makeup brushes scattered on my dresser. Her perfume still lingered in the air. My mother's mirror had lipstick kisses drawn on it, like I was already erased. But I was done mourning. I cleaned it all out, folded the gowns, packed the stray shoes, took down the string lights they'd nailed into the ceiling without asking. I placed everything into neat boxes and labeled them clearly. Nicole. Then I set the boxes by the door. One final gift. I wasn't doing it to be kind. I was doing it to make one thing clear. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't spiteful. I was just done. Around sunset, there was a knock at the door. It was Dad. He stood there with that familiar expression, somewhere between shame and pride, like he didn't know which one fit anymore. I came to help her gather her things, he said softly. I nodded and stepped aside. He walked in, looked around, and then paused in the living room. The same room where Nicole was supposed to say, I do. This used to be your mother's favorite spot, he murmured. I looked at the rug, the one I bought, the one they nearly ruined with champagne the night before. She'd be heartbroken if she saw what we became, he added. I didn't disagree. He turned to me, eyes tired. You were right to stand up for yourself. I just wish it hadn't come to this. I didn't say much. Just looked at him and replied, it came to this because no one listened before. He didn't argue, just nodded, and kept packing. After Dad left, the house was quiet. But this time the silence wasn't heavy. It was calm and peaceful. For the first time in years, I was truly able to relax. No judgments, no accusations, just me, in my own home, in my own space. I began fixing the small things that everyone had ignored. The broken door, the dripping sink, and a small cracked window. These were pieces of my life I was putting back together. Friends started coming back too. The ones who really stood by me, not just for fun or appearances. Sarah, my best friend, once came over with a cake and smiled. "You deserve all this, Brooke. You fought for your place, and you won." I looked at her, tears in my eyes, but peace in my heart. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was my life, my identity. I was no longer the forgotten sister who was excluded from the wedding. Not the girl they called selfish, just because I stood up for what was mine. I was Brooke Ellison, and I was free. Sleeping in my room at night was no longer just sleep. It was my own safe space. The old story of my life was behind me. Now, a new story was in my hands, and whatever came next, I was ready. Months passed, and the house that once felt like a prison now felt like home. The air inside was lighter, filled with hope and new possibilities. I invited Dad over one evening. There was no anger this time, no bitter words, just honesty and healing. "I'm proud of you, Brooke," he said softly, his eyes filled with emotion. "You taught me what family really means. It's not about who gets what, but about respect and love." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. For the first time, we were on the same page. Nicole tried to reach out a few times, but I wasn't ready. Some wounds take longer to heal, and I had to protect my peace. I focused on myself, finishing my degree, starting a small business, and building a life that was truly mine. The house became a sanctuary, filled with laughter, friends, and the warmth I had longed for. I hung up pictures of Mom and Dad, alongside my own moments of happiness and growth. One evening, standing in the backyard where Nicole's wedding once was, I whispered, "This is where my real story begins." I was no longer the sister left out in the cold, no longer the girl everyone misunderstood. I was Brooke Ellison, stronger, wiser, and finally free.